welcome to another edition of History in Your Own Backyard. I'm Scott Borders. Welcome to Carthage, Indiana, still in Rush County. And today joining me is Claire Mercer. And Claire, here in Carthage, why don't you tell me a little bit about this wonderful library here?
Glad to. We are in front of the Hanley Memorial Library, and it is a very special place in Carthage. It has been here since 1901. And it's a unique library in that it was never a Carnegie library. It was founded by the Quakers. The community of Carthage was settled by the Quakers or the Friends, and one of the founders of the town, Hanley, donated the first $1,000 toward the library, and he also the land. He donated the land, and it has been supported by the Quakers. It's been just an important part of our town for over 100 years.
Now, I notice as you look in the outside of the library, there's this nice bell that sits out in the front part of the library. Can you tell us a little bit about that bell?
Yes, it has an interesting history. It was in the old Carthage School, which was built in 1896. It was a beautiful facility. It was 3 stories, and at the very top in the bell tower hung the bell, the school bell. Well, in 1922, that 3rd story, including the bell, this was all destroyed by a big storm, and the bell came down. And it actually has been in storage since 1922. Now, it was in a little cubby hole at the school, and eventually we lost our school, as many of the little towns around have. The Carthage school came down. It continued to be stored until they built a new elementary, and at that time the bell was put on display out in the yard of the schoolyard. Well, just a few years ago the elementary school closed, and this historic bell, was stored in a farmer's barn. Well, just recently, within the last year, the Carthage Alumni Association got the bell. They had this stand erected, the little walkway, and we have it here proudly sitting in front of the library.
Now, Claire, tell me a little bit about how this town is involved with the Underground Railroad.
This is very interesting. I mentioned the town was founded by the Quakers, the Friends, and of course they were very much in disfavor of slavery. And they assisted with the Underground Railroad. And I know that Thomas Newby was one of the people who worked with it. There were several others. Walnut Ridge, Meeting House, harbored slaves. And they were transported from here up to Fountain City, up to where Levi Coffin's home was. And then from there, they were helped to make their way on to Canada, to freedom. And this is a proud part of Carthage history.
And Thomas Newby's house was actually a part of that as well, correct?
Yes, it was. And we know that for sure. And I know there are other places around, including, as I said, Walnut Ridge. And I know that some of the merchants of town strongly promoted the slaves getting their freedom. There were other blacks who came to Carthage, and these men and women were never slaves. They were free blacks, and they came up with the Quakers from North Carolina, and they established their own community out at what they call the beach.
Now, Claire, I keep hearing this name, Blazing Star, associated with Carthage. So there's been some somewhat famous people in the town of Carthage.
Yes, there have been a lot of famous and interesting, fascinating characters in Carthage, but one that stands out in my mind is an Indian named Blazing Star. Now, I have a photo of him that was taken in Peru, Indiana, in his native costume, and I assume that he was with the Wild West show at the circus in Peru. Well, he came to Carthage in 1888. And he came just to speak about the Indian way of life. And it turned out he was a Cheyenne Indian from out west. And his native name, his actual name was Kikayoka, which meant Blazing Star. Well, Blazing Star must have liked Carthage very much because he made his home here with a couple named John and Caroline Wilson. And he became a familiar sight around town, and people just came to love Blazing Star, especially the children. He would walk around town dressed in his native buckskins, and he had a big dog named Wolf, and it would follow him around. And he was very good to the children. He would give them little trinkets, and he even made one special little friend a double hobby horse.
Now, Claire, this used to be a thriving town with somewhere between 40 and 50 businesses not too long ago. Tell us a little bit about that time and some of those businesses.
Well, I was told by Kathy Gibson that in the 1940s there were as many as 40 or 50 businesses, and I actually moved here in 1964. My husband and I came to teach school, and at that time there were probably about that many businesses. It was very active downtown. They had a bank and a post office. We had a newspaper, the Carthage Citizen, that had all the latest news. They had hardware stores, restaurants, a jewelry shop, had a variety store, which is still in business. And, looking to the days before that, they had a livery stable, they had, blacksmith shops, a tannery, and more than one mill. The mills were very important to town, and so many merchants through the years. Now, I believe it was around 1930 that the Container Corporation came to town. Everyone called it the mill, and an influx of people came up from Kentucky to work at the mill, at the paper mill. And there also was a box factory, there was a canning factory, just so many businesses that were vibrant, and people could do really all of their trading and business right here in town. Oh, the gas stations, the elevator, the grain elevator, the train came through. It was a busy and vibrant place.
Now, Claire, one thing I know about towns like Carthage, there's always some historical buildings. Tell me a little bit about the historical buildings here.
All right, there's several still standing, and of course we're standing in front of the library. There is the Friends Meeting House down on South Main. And then there also is what used to be a Friends Academy right across the street, and it's still in good condition. There's the Methodist Church. There's East Street Christian.
Now, there's a lumber mill
Oh, yes. It was Tweedy Lumber. Right, and 3 generations of the Tweedy family had the lumber company. The bank building still stands. The stores that once were housed in what was called the Newsom Block. We have post office. We also have what was the Booker T. Washington School, and it once was a fine building. It was built in 1908 for black students. Now it is occupied as an apartment building, but it has a rich history.
Thank you once again for tuning in to another episode of History in Your Own Backyard. We're saying goodbye to you from Carthage, Indiana in Rush County. This is Claire Mercer. I'm Scott Borders. Remember, travel slowly and stop often. Goodbye.